Ade Gonglia, greetings from West Papua. I'm Rosa Moiwend, a human rights activist and defender, and I'm also an indigenous woman from Malin Anim tribe in Merauke, the southern part of West Papua. At this very moment, when people of the South Korea are having a tribunal, I would like to use this opportunity to share the story and experience of human rights situation in West Papua and how it connects to the South Korea. Before I share my stories, I would like to begin with a short introduction about West Papua. West Papua is located in a massive island near Australia called New Guinea Island. It was named by European explorers who found that massive island have occupied by indigenous people who look like Guinea people in Africa. That is why they named the island after Guinea, so they call it New Guinea. Since then, the island divided by Europeans into three parts: Dutch New Guinea, later known as West Papua, which is the western half of the island, and then German New Guinea, which is divided from the other half of the island. So up the north of the other half of the island, it's called German New Guinea, and British Papua on the southern part of the other half. So we were divided into three parts. Western part is Dutch New Guinea, eastern part is German New Guinea, and British Papua. So when the Second World War ended, the German New Guinea and British Papua joined and became an independent state of Papua New Guinea, while the other half on the western part, which is West Papua, remain on the process of decolonization from the Dutch to become an independent state too. However, in 1969, the Indonesia's first president, Sukarno, sent a military operation called Three People's Command, or Trikora, to invade the West Papua territory and later then administrate the territory until today. For West Papuan, this was an act of annexation and occupation. Therefore, people of West Papua opposed the occupation and resisting actively until today. Meanwhile, for Indonesian authority, this was an act of liberating West Papua and its people from the European colonial by integrating West Papua into Indonesia and became one of the part of the Indonesia or the provinces of Indonesia. So this background had become a seat of conflict between Indonesia authority and West Papuan people until today. And to respond to this people's resistance, instead of negotiate, the government of Indonesia never willing to negotiate with the West Papuans, and they use a military approach to stop the conflict or to deal with the conflict and to deal with these rejection and resistance from the people. So until today, this conflict and tension between these two parties is remain, and this has created a lot of human rights violations against the people of West Papua. So West Papua is a very rich country. West Papua is very rich of natural resources such as forest, fish, mining, and as a consequences, the government of Indonesia as a ruling party has been promoting investment in West Papua and invited as many as foreign investors, including from the South Korea. And this interest of promoting investment by the governments also implemented into many of the policies and regulations. So in 1973, Indonesia and South Korea established a diplomatic relations, and both countries started trade and investment. In 1975, a Korean company by the name of Corindo, founded by a South Korean Sung Eun-ho, had invested in timber business in Indonesia and looked for raw materials from the rainforest of Indonesia. So West Papua is one of the largest islands in Indonesia with massive natural rainforest besides Sumatra and Kalimantan. Corindo then expanded its logging operations across Indonesia, including West Papua, and they built giant sawmill, planted seeds of timbers and oil palm crops. So when the business is growing and developed, they also expand their business and develop not only to the crops and palm oil and logging, but also to develop to the construction, paper, manufacturing, and shipping. So this business puts Sung Eun-ho into the rank of one of the rich person, I guess. Corindo possessed the rights of many customary lands of indigenous people in West Papua. That's including from my tribes in the south. We are affected also by the presence of Corindo. And the size of the land that possessed by Corindo is about twice of the size of Seoul, the capital of South Korea. According to the report of some environmental organizations, since 2013, Corindo has cut down 30,000 hectares or almost 74,000 acres of rainforest in West Papua. So today, Corindo controls more land in Papua than any other investors and replaced our forest with a palm oil plantation. So the operation of the company also created series of conflict with indigenous people, and it always end up with the involvement of Indonesian military and police, and sometimes end up with riots and killed many villagers, and it happened for years. What I mean by this is like when people or indigenous people came to the company and asking for the payment or the promise of the company to them to develop their lives, and company always avoid to respond, and instead they send the security of the company to face and to talk or even to stop people from asking questions. And most of the security of the company on the ground in the company's areas are recruited and trained by military and police. For example, like in Merauke recently, all the workers had to go through the defense training, and it was trained by the Indonesian Air Force. Yeah. However, indigenous Papuans experienced that Corindo had failed to keep its promise to improve their life through jobs and development, as it was promised when first time Corindo came and approached our people. For us, forest is our supermarket, our source of food and traditional medicines. So today, mothers and infants, especially in the southern part of West Papua where Corindos operated, They are suffering from malnutrition, while we know that palm oil business worth tens of millions of dollars is exported from our land each year. Corindo only paid our people between $5 and $10 per hectares since the beginning to kind of ask them to give up their land, and they also pay about only $1 per each cubic meters of timber that harvested from our land in West Papua, while Corindo itself exported the same timber for 200 times prices after turning into plywood. And this has just happened, one of the example that happened in Asiki, one of the villages in the southern part of West Papua. So now I'm going to continue with the role of military and police and its connection to the South Korea. Since 2009 to 2019, South Korea was the largest exporter of weapons to Indonesian forces. Indonesia and South Korea have invested in multiple joint military development projects, including developing a fighter jet. In April 2021, Indonesian Defense Minister Prabowo Subianto met his Korean counterpart Soo Wook and President Moon Jae-in during a 3-day visit to South Korea to discuss military cooperation and Indonesia's partnership. Moon also expressed his hope that Korea and Indonesia would work together on production and military technology transfers to advance their mutual defense and security in the future. Human rights group in West Papua, Indonesia and Australia found that the Indonesian military and police use weapons and military equipment, products of the South Korean companies, to pressure and stop West Papuans from their actions against exploitation of natural resources, human rights violations in West Papua, as well as to speak up about their demand for self-determination. So I can mention some names of the South Korean companies such as Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, or DSME. So this company has supplied Indonesia with some equipment like Tarantula, Panzer for the army, and then the submarine Changbogo class for the navy, and also other equipment and aircraft for the Indonesian Air Force. And this is one of the example. Those equipments being used in West Papua by Indonesian military. And the close relationship between Indonesian and Korean military is highlighted by the training of military personnel at the South Korean Presidential Security Service, PSS, training facilities. Another company I can mention by the name is Daiji PNI, which is the South Korean company, produce military vehicles and other equipment. Those very, very modern military vehicle that being used in West Papua by the Indonesian police, especially to stop West Papuan protesters and peaceful demonstrators to express their opinion or their view about human rights situations in West Papua. So their equipment from Daiji PNI being used to suppress the protesters. And we know that some of these equipment are very advanced, like they have holes for machine gun, and also they have spotlights, sirens, CCTV camera systems, and also containing like gas tear gas canisters. So anytime they can use it to shot the tear gas and chase out the protesters. So it happened many times in West Papua, especially in the city where I live. I witnessed many times when, especially in the last 2 years, that the use of tear gas is very, it's quite active, that police use this equipment and tear gas to the protesters. Another equipment produced by Daiji PNI is water cannons, and I can say this is something that it's really I've been witnessing how water cannon being used to stop peaceful demonstrations, especially students, especially in the last year when West Papuan people and students leading protest against the Jakarta policies of the divisions of the new provinces and kind of forced policies from Jakarta to West Papua, just to divide people and also to take more natural resources. So our students organized peaceful protest, and they were very disciplined, non-violently sitting on the street and started to speak up about the situation and try to educate our people. And suddenly the water cannon came and just spread the water against these students, activists who are unarmed. They just there sitting, disciplined, maintaining discipline, non-violent protest, and yet the police use this water cannon that throw water with the high speed, and it hit many of the students, and many of them are very severe injured. And police never made any statement about the use of water cannon. And the video, lucky that we have a video of that gone viral, so people could see how the West Papuan Indonesian police in West Papua use the water cannon to stop people. This company is also produce guns, weapon like machine guns, and those machine guns like K7, K3 or K2, they all being used by special forces from the Indonesian military and special unit like rider troops, and they're being deployed to West Papua since 2019 regularly. So according to our monitoring, the deployment of these military troops and police to West Papua from outside West Papua or other provinces in Indonesia have been increased since 2019 until recently 2023, and now we can estimate about last year is about 10,000 troops being deployed, and this year it started again. So we can imagine how these military members walking in the village, in the middle of the village in West Papua, and carrying a machine gun, and of course it will create trauma for our people in the village, especially in a conflict area where armed conflict had been going for a long time between freedom fighters, the armed groups freedom fighters from West Papua who fight against Indonesian military. So this situation, the use of guns and equipment, especially in a conflict area, had been creating a massive internal displaced people, women, children, elderly. They had to flew out from their villages and live in a nearest village, or even walk for weeks and months to other town so then they can be saved. At the moment, the ongoing armed conflict in some area in West Papua still continue, and about 60,000 internal displaced people, they can't go back to their village. They still there, out there, and there is no particular attention from the government of Indonesia to these internal displaced people, even though UN human rights expert already put a question to the Indonesian government at the Universal Periodic Review last year about the situation of internal displaced people, but it's still no response. So the troops that I mentioned before, the riders, the special unit, or the paramilitary police who deployed to this conflict zone or conflict area, they carried the weapons like K7, K2, and most of them are produced by South Korean company, beside some equipment that produced by some countries like Kosovo, so some European countries, I mean. Another company is Hyundai and Kia. We know those companies very famous in here in terms of their family cars, but we didn't realize that they also produce military vehicle, and those military vehicle being used by Indonesian military here to drop and to deploy troops, and we didn't realize that until we found that recently, so it's quite shocking. Yeah. They also produce Barracuda and some other vehicles, and for me Barracuda is like something that very visible in town, in the city where I live. Like every time we can see Barracuda running around in the city, where people sometimes get shocked because everyone will think that something might happen. So Barracuda will running around in a high speed mode, and normally when there is a very important moment like visit of high ranked people or presidents or other ministers, Barracuda is and water cannons always there, and Barracuda also being used to stop peaceful demonstrators. Every time West Papuan people assembly or gathered to protest against something, Barracuda always there with water cannon and also other equipment. So it's sometimes it feels like we are in a war zone. Even we live in the city with very modern, not very modern, but it's like in a developed situation where we have malls, we have hotels everywhere, but we also have barracudas and water cannon running around in the city. So after all, I feel like it's now I feel more connected to the South Korean people. Not only, I mean, firstly, I was always feel connected to the South Korean because of the Korean drama, which is very popular and aired in many Indonesian television stations and also accessed through the online. So I always love to watch the Korean drama. But now, since I have knowledge about this, then I feel more connected to the people of South Korea and the struggle of Jeju Island peoples and the people of South Korea who opposed the militarism and also opposed all the armed trades. And I feel that, and I know that it's also impact our life here in West Papua. So at this very moment, I also want to send my solidarity to the South Korean people and to this tribunal. And I believe that when we come together, bring our stories together, we can always empower ourselves to make us more brave and to make us more confident to fight against this same cause that affected the life of our people. So, in solidarity to you all, thank you.